The security feed showed Marcus Webb carrying his personal belongings in a recycled cardboard box. 32 years of service to the Terran Diplomatic Corps reduced to a coffee mug, 3 commendation plaques, and a broken stylus. His supervisor hadn't even looked up when signing the termination order. Budget cuts, they said. Redundancy and translation services, they explained. The new AI systems could handle basic alien communications without human oversight. Marcus had nodded, signed the severance documents, and walked out of the compound without protest. He was 60 years old. Too experienced to retrain, too young to retire comfortably. The pension would barely cover rent in the outer districts. 3 days later, the Zashathran delegation arrived. The news feeds exploded with footage of the massive crystalline vessels descending through Earth's atmosphere. The Zathran Empire controlled 47 star systems and had never initiated diplomatic contact with humanity before. Their ships hovered over Geneva, unmoving, while every government on Earth scrambled to prepare a reception. Marcus watched from his apartment, drinking cheap whiskey and trying not to calculate how many grocery trips remained in his severance pay. The diplomatic corps would handle it. They had the AI translators now. They didn't need him. His comm unit buzzed. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately. Then again. Marcus answered on the 4th attempt. Webb here. Mr. Webb, this is Director Chen from Terran Diplomatic Command. We need you to report immediately. You fired me 3 days ago.
The Zatrine Queen specifically requested a human negotiator. We assigned our top team.
Chen's voice tightened.
She rejected the AI translators. She demanded to speak with the human who understood the 7th Resonance Treaty. The whiskey glass stopped halfway to Marcus's lips. The 7th Resonance Treaty. A minor trade agreement signed 14 years ago between the Zashathran and a small mining colony on Titan's moon. Marcus had been the only human translator present. The negotiations had taken 6 months because the Zathran Empress communicated through harmonic frequencies that standard translation software couldn't properly interpret. Marcus had learned to read the subtle modulations himself, bridging the gap between human speech and crystalline resonance. The AI can handle basic Zathran communication, Marcus said slowly, but you can't teach a machine to understand context that isn't in the database. She won't speak to anyone else. We need you here in 1 hour. I don't work for you anymore. We're reinstating your position. Full back pay, double your previous salary. What does she want? We don't know. She won't tell us. She'll only communicate through you. The diplomatic compound looked the same. Security waved him through without the usual scans, and Marcus realized how desperate they must be. Director Chen met him at the main entrance, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. The delegation is in Conference Hall 1, she said, walking fast enough that Marcus had to hurry to keep pace. We've had preliminary contact through text-based systems, but the Queen insists on direct harmonic communication for anything substantive. Your equipment is already set up. What preliminary information did you get? Chen handed him a tablet. Judge for yourself. Marcus scanned the transcript. Standard diplomatic pleasantries translated through the AI, then a single line that made his blood run cold. We require the human Marcus Webb. The matter concerns Protocol 17. Protocol 17 doesn't exist. We've searched every database. There's no record of any Protocol 17 in Zathran diplomatic history. Then why, that's what you need to find out. The walls were lined with crystalline panels that could translate and amplify the harmonic frequencies the Zathrine used for communication. In the center of the room stood 3 figures that resembled sculptures carved from living diamond. Light refracted through their bodies in cascading patterns, and Marcus recognized the tallest one immediately. Queen Shiara. He'd met her once briefly, during the 7th Resonance negotiations. She'd been a junior diplomat then. Chen gestured to the communication console. We'll monitor from the observation room. Be careful. Marcus approached the console and placed his hands on the resonance pads. The system hummed to life, and he felt the familiar vibration as it connected to the Zathran communication network. He took a breath and initiated the harmonic greeting. The sound that emerged wasn't quite music and wasn't quite speech, but something in between. A frequency that human vocal cords couldn't produce, but the resonance system could replicate. The Queen responded immediately. Her harmonic pattern carried notes of urgency and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. Fear, perhaps, or desperation. The translation formed in his mind, not as words but as concepts that his brain converted into language. Marcus Webb. Finally, we have 12 hours before they arrive. Before who arrives? Marcus sent back through the harmonic interface. The Queen's form brightened, light pulsing through her crystalline structure in rapid patterns. The Devourers. They followed us here. We tried to warn you through official channels, but your new systems couldn't understand. Protocol 17 isn't a diplomatic procedure. It's a survival instruction. You're the only human who knows the old communication methods. The only one who can coordinate what needs to happen. Marcus's hands went numb on the console. What needs to happen? Every human in the system has 12 hours to reach deep space shelters. The Devourers consume everything. Planets, stars, civilizations. We've been running from them for 3 years. We came here to warn you because the Seventh Resonance Treaty bound us to protect your species in times of existential threat. But we can only help if someone understands what we're saying. The observation room had gone silent. Marcus knew they could see the harmonic patterns, but couldn't interpret the actual communication. Why didn't you just tell us this through the AI systems? Marcus asked. The Queen's response carried a harmonic note of profound sadness. We tried. For 6 days we sent warnings. Your systems translated it as trade proposals and cultural exchange requests. The nuances were lost. By the time we realized your new translation systems couldn't perceive threat warnings in our language, we'd wasted too much time. We searched your databases for anyone who understood harmonic communication. Only one name appeared. Marcus thought of his supervisor, signing the termination order without looking up. 3 days. If he'd been fired 3 days earlier, the Queen wouldn't have found his name in the active personnel database. I need to tell my government, Marcus said. They need to hear this directly. Then tell them quickly. The Devourers don't negotiate. They simply consume, and they'll be here before sunrise. Marcus pulled his hands from the console and turned to face the observation window where he knew Chen and her team were watching. His voice was steady when he spoke into the comm unit. Director Chen, I need you to activate every emergency broadcast system on Earth. Right now. We have a situation. The Queen's crystalline form pulsed with light that somehow conveyed approval, and Marcus realized with crystalline clarity that the next 12 hours would determine whether humanity had a future at all. The diplomatic skills he'd spent 3 decades developing suddenly meant the difference between survival and extinction, and it had almost been thrown away, over budget cuts and AI efficiency reports. Chen's voice came through the comm unit, tight with controlled panic. What situation? Marcus looked at the Queen, at the way light refracted through her form in patterns that carried more meaning than any human language could express in simple words. He'd spent years learning to read those patterns, understanding that some forms of communication couldn't be reduced to algorithms in databases. We're about to have visitors, he said, and they're not coming to talk. The compound erupted into controlled chaos. Chen had the good sense to believe him immediately, perhaps because the sheer impossibility of the situation left no room for skepticism. Marcus heard her voice over the building's intercom system issuing evacuation orders to all personnel while simultaneously connecting to emergency military channels. Marcus returned to the resonance console. How many ships do the Devourers have? Queen Shiara's harmonic response carried layers of meaning that Marcus's mind struggled to process. Numbers weren't conveyed the same way in their language. Instead, he received an impression of vastness, of a fleet so large it had consumed 3 star systems in the past year alone. His hands trembled on the console. We need specifics, Marcus sent back. Human military commanders think in terms of numbers and tactical data. Help me give them something they can understand. The Queen adjusted her harmonic frequency, simplifying it. Marcus appreciated the effort. Most species couldn't modulate their communication styles mid-conversation. Approximately 4,000 vessels. Mass ranging from small fighters to planet crackers. They travel through dimensional rifts, which is why your long-range sensors haven't detected them yet. They'll emerge from folded space directly into your solar system. Marcus relayed the information to Chen through the comm unit. He heard her sharp intake of breath, followed by rapid-fire orders to military personnel. The compound's walls began to vibrate with the sound of ships launching from nearby military installations. Humanity's defensive fleet scrambling to positions. Tell me about Protocol 17, Marcus said to the Queen. What exactly does it require? The Queen's form dimmed slightly, and Marcus recognized the harmonic pattern of reluctance. The Seventh Resonance Treaty contained hidden clauses. We built them into the harmonic frequencies knowing that only a human who truly understood our language would ever perceive them. Protocol 17 states that in times of existential threat to either species, we provide shelter and resources for evacuation. We have 3 colony ships in orbit, each capable of holding 5 million humans in stasis. we can save 15 million of your people out of 8 billion. Marcus felt the weight of that calculation settle over him like a shroud. Why hide it in the treaty, he asked. Why not make it explicit? Because our own government didn't authorize it. The Queen's harmonic pattern carried defiance and pride. I was part of a faction that believed the Devourers would eventually threaten all species. We wanted insurance. Protection. Alliances that went beyond trade agreements. So we embedded protocols in every treaty we signed, hoping that someday someone would understand them. You were the first to truly learn our language. The first to see beyond surface translations. Chen's voice cut through the comm unit. Webb, we need you in the command center. Now. Marcus pulled away from the console but gestured for the Queen to follow. The Jathran delegation moved with surprising grace despite their crystalline structure, gliding rather than walking. Security personnel stared as they passed, but no one tried to stop them. The command center was a controlled maelstrom of activity. Holographic displays showed Earth's defensive fleet taking positions around the planet. Military commanders shouted orders while analysts tracked sensor data. Chen stood at the center console, her face pale but composed. The UN Security Council's in emergency session, she said to Marcus. They need to hear this directly from you and the Queen. We're setting up a harmonic interface for live translation. Marcus shook his head. There isn't time. The translation delay alone will cost us 30 minutes. Let me summarize. We have 12 hours to evacuate 15 million people to Zothran colony ships. Everyone else needs to get to deep underground shelters or off-world installations. The Devourers will hit us with approximately 4,000 ships.
They don't negotiate. They consume everything and move on.
A general Marcus didn't recognize stepped forward, his uniform bearing enough metals to armor a tank. And we're trusting this information because Marcus Webb is the only human translator who understands harmonic communication at the level required, Chen said sharply. And because the Jatrine came here voluntarily to warn us despite having no strategic benefit in doing so. Queen Shiara moved to the center of the room. Her form pulsed with light, and even without the resonance console, everyone could hear the haunting sound of her harmonic voice. It wasn't language exactly, but something that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to primal human instincts. Every person in the room felt it. The weight of absolute truth. The general's face went gray. Jesus Christ. Deployment orders, Chen said, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. Webb, you coordinate with the Queen on evacuation protocols. I want selection criteria for those 15 million slots within the hour. Military command, prepare the fleet. Science division, I need every bit of data we have on dimensional rifts and how to detect them. The next hour blurred into frantic organization. Marcus worked with the Queen to establish evacuation zones, prioritizing children, pregnant women, genetic diversity, and essential skill sets. The choices were impossible. Every name on the list meant 700 people who wouldn't make it. Every category they prioritized meant excluding others. A young analyst approached Marcus, her hands shaking as she held out a tablet. Sir, we need to select representatives from each major population center for political balance. The UN is insisting.
Marcus looked at the numbers.
Political balance would mean saving fewer children. He turned to Chen. Tell the UN that if they want to argue about politics while the world ends, they can do it from a bunker. We're prioritizing survival skills and genetic diversity. End of discussion. Chen nodded sharply and relayed the message. Marcus appreciated that she didn't hesitate. Queen Shiara's harmonic voice resonated through the room, and Marcus moved to the translation console they'd set up. Her message formed in his mind. Our ships are preparing docking protocols. We need to begin boarding in 6 hours to ensure everyone is in stasis before the Devourers arrive. My people are already positioning vessels near your major population centers. Marcus relayed the information, then asked the question that had been gnawing at him. Why did you really come? You could have run. Kept running. The Queen's response carried complex harmonics that took Marcus several seconds to fully interpret. When he finally understood, he felt something in his chest tighten. Because the Seventh Resonance Treaty wasn't just a trade agreement to us. You treated us with respect. Dignity. You learned our language not to exploit us, but to understand us. In 3 decades of contact with other species, you were the first to do that. When we discovered the Devourers were following us, we calculated trajectories. We could have altered course, let them pass by your system without ever knowing. But Protocol 17 exists because some debts transcend survival instinct. You showed us what it meant to truly communicate. We won't abandon you now. Marcus translated for the room, his voice rougher than intended. Chen's eyes were bright, though her expression remained controlled. Well, she said quietly, I guess firing you was a mistake. Understatement of the century, Marcus replied. The command center's alarm system shrieked to life. Every display turned red simultaneously. A technician shouted over the noise. Dimensional rifts opening at the edge of the solar system.
Multiple signatures.
Hundreds of them. 8 hours early, the general snarled. Can we hold them? Marcus turned to the Queen. Her crystalline form had gone almost transparent, light pulsing through her in rapid, panicked patterns. He didn't need the translation console to understand. They'd underestimated the Devourer's speed. New plan, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We need to begin evacuations immediately. The Jothran ships need to start boarding procedures now, and our military fleet needs to buy us every second they can. Chen was already issuing orders before he finished speaking. The room exploded into coordinated action, decades of military training overriding panic. Marcus watched displays showing civilian transports launching from major cities, heading for designated Jothrine collection points. The numbers climbed. 10,000 evacuees aboard. 50,000. 100,000. Not nearly enough. Not nearly fast enough. Webb. The Queen's harmonic voice pulled his attention back to her. There's something else you need to know about Protocol 17. A final clause. Marcus felt dread settle in his stomach. What clause? The colony ships can reach maximum capacity, but they'll be vulnerable during boarding operations. They need protection. A rear guard to hold the line while evacuation proceeds. Protocol 17 designated that if the human translator who understood it ever needed to implement it, they would be lead that rear guard, because they would understand what needed to be done. Marcus stared at her crystalline form, at the patterns of light that conveyed both apology and absolute certainty. You're saying I can't evacuate? I'm saying that protocol requires you to coordinate the defense, to make impossible decisions in real time. To sacrifice what must be sacrificed so that 15 million humans survive. The Queen's form pulsed with harmonics that somehow conveyed both sorrow and respect. You're the only one who can communicate fast enough with both our ships and your military. The only bridge between species and the time we have left. Webb, you don't have to? Yes, I do. Marcus pulled free gently. He looked at the displays showing evacuation numbers still climbing. Children being loaded into Zothran vessels, families saying desperate goodbyes. His whole career had been about building bridges between species, finding ways to communicate across the vast gulfs of biology and culture. This was what it had all been leading to. I need direct command authority, Marcus said to Chen. Full tactical control to coordinate between human and Zahathran forces. Chen's face was stone. You have it. The displays showed the first Devourer ships emerging from dimensional rifts near Jupiter. They looked wrong, even on holographic displays. Dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, moving with predatory purpose toward the inner solar system. Marcus pulled up tactical overlays and began issuing orders. Human destroyers moved to intercept while fighters formed screening patterns. Zothran vessels adjusted positions to maximize evacuation efficiency while minimizing exposure. The Queen's delegation joined him at the command console, their harmonic voices blending with his translated orders in a strange symphony of desperation and determination. The first engagement lasted 18 seconds. 3 human destroyers against a single Devourer ship. The destroyers unleashed everything they had. Missiles, railguns, energy weapons. The Devourer absorbed it all and kept coming. When it reached the first destroyer, it simply enveloped the ship. Marcus watched the thermal signatures blink out one by one as the Devourer consumed metal, fuel, and crew without discrimination. They're not fighting us, the general said, his voice hollow. They're eating us. Then we make them choke. All ships new directive. Don't engage directly. Use hit-and-run tactics. Draw them away from evacuation zones. Make them chase you. The tactical display shifted as human and Zothran forces adapted. Instead of forming defensive lines, they became harassment units, darting in, firing, retreating before the Devourers could respond. It wouldn't stop them, but it would slow them down. Every second mattered. Every second meant more people reaching the colony ships. 3 hours passed in a blur of tactical adjustments and impossible decisions. Marcus watched hundreds of ships sacrifice themselves to buy minutes tea. He listened to final transmissions from captains who knew they weren't coming home. He made calls that sent thousands to their deaths and tried not to calculate the mathematics of it. The evacuation counter climbed. 8 million. 10 million. 12 million. A Zothrian colony ship took damage from a devourer that broke through the defensive screen. The Queen's harmonic cry of anguish needed no translation. Marcus redirected 3 human cruisers to cover the wounded vessel while its engines repaired. All 3 cruisers were consumed within minutes, but the colony ship escaped with 4.8 million people in stasis. Chen appeared at his shoulder with coffee he didn't remember asking for. "You need to take a break." "Can't. The moment I stop coordinating, the timing falls apart." Marcus's voice was hoarse from constant communication. "How many more?" "We're running out of time." The displays showed Devourer ships entering Earth's orbital space. The defensive fleet was shattered, reduced to scattered groups fighting desperate holding actions. But the Jothran colony ships were almost full. "Final evacuation wave," Marcus ordered. "All remaining transports, emergency burn to the colony ships, defensive forces, everything you have. Buy them." 5 more minutes. He watched the last civilian transports accelerate towards safety, pursued by Devourer vessels that moved with terrifying speed. Human fighters threw themselves into the path, sacrificing themselves without hesitation. Marcus recognized some of the call signs. People he'd worked with over the years, friends. The evacuation counter hit 15 million and locked. "Colony ships are at capacity," the Queen reported through harmonic frequencies that trembled with exhaustion and grief. "We must leave now or risk losing everyone aboard." "Go," Marcus said. "Get them out of here." The 3 massive Jothran vessels began to move, their crystalline hulls reflecting Earth's sunlight one final time. Marcus watched them accelerate toward the edge of the system, toward safety, carrying humanity's future in their holds. Behind them, the Devourers descended on Earth like a plague of darkness. Chen stood beside him at the command console, along with the skeleton crew that had volunteered to remain. No one spoke. They'd saved 15 million people. They'd lost 8 billion. Marcus thought about his apartment, his coffee mug in that cardboard box, the termination order signed without his supervisor looking up. He thought about 32 years of building bridges between species, learning languages, finding common ground in the vast darkness of space. None of it had been wasted. Every conversation, every treaty, every moment spent truly understanding instead of simply translating, it had all led here, to this moment, to the knowledge that 15 million people would survive because he'd refused to let communication be reduced to algorithms and efficiency reports. The Queen's form pulsed beside him, her harmonic voice gentle. "Thank you, Marcus Webb. Protocol 17 is complete. Humanity will remember what you did here." "Will they?" Marcus asked. "Most of them are dead. The 15 million will carry your story. They'll rebuild. And they'll know that when it mattered most, one human understood what it truly meant to communicate across the boundaries of species. You didn't just translate words. You translated hope." The Devourers reached Earth's atmosphere. Marcus could see them on the displays now, descending like a biblical plague. He thought about all the places he'd never visit again, all the people he'd never see. He thought about the sunset view from his apartment, and wondered if anyone would remember what it looked like. Chen's hand found his. Her grip was iron strong, despite the trembling he could feel. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "firing you was the stupidest decision this organization ever made. And hiring me back was the smartest. Funny how that worked out." The compound's walls began to shake as the first Devourers made landfall. The displays went dark one by one as sensors failed or were consumed. Marcus kept his eyes on the command console's last functioning screen, watching the 3 colony ships accelerate away from Earth at speeds that would take them beyond the Devourer's reach. In the final seconds before the darkness came, he saw them make the jump to faster-than-light travel, carrying 15 million humans toward the Zothran home systems, and a future that would remember this moment not as humanity's end, but as its most desperate and defiant hour. Marcus Webb had spent his entire career teaching machines and people alike that real communication required more than translating words. It required understanding, empathy, the willingness to see beyond surfaces and protocols to the truth beneath. In the end, that understanding had saved a fraction of humanity and forged an alliance that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Not bad for a man who'd been fired over budget cuts. The Queen's final harmonic message resonated through the dying compound, a sound like crystal bells singing in the dark. Your name will be the first word we teach their children in our language, the first bridge between our species. Rest now, Marcus Webb. You've earned it. The darkness closed in, but Marcus felt no fear. He'd done what he was meant to do. He'd communicated when it mattered most. He'd built a bridge that would stand long after he was gone. And in the end, that was enough.